I moved my workstation so I could get through a table, and also so I could use these tools if I needed to. This is a table saw. Use this to make long cuts on a piece of wood, usually with the grain of the wood. There's a blade here that spins really fast and cuts the wood. And then this is a chop saw, or the other name escapes me. There's another name for it as well, but it's for cutting the wood against the grain, usually in shorter cuts, as you can see here. And I remembered, I decided not to router my edges or cut them at an angle or a curve. I think I'll just go through afterwards and sand them all smooth. I kind of like the square look at this point, and also just time wise I think it'll be better. But this would be the bottom piece, and you could round this edge or put some sort of design in it with the router, but I'm not going to do that. And actually, even after the whole thing's all built, if you're skilled enough, you can probably put some router edges in it. But so the next step here is I'm going to glue all these together. I have my dowels. You have to make sure you got the right size with what you drilled in. And so I'll open up the packet here. Okay, so here's the packet with these. And they fit in snugly, which is fine. It's kind of what we want them to fit in snugly. I'll probably go get a hammer to help me put them in when the time comes. But what I'll do is I'll take this wood glue. It's interior, there's also exterior, but this thing's jewelry box is not going to be exterior, so I didn't need that. And I'm just going to put some goop in there. I'll put some, and then I'll just stick it down in there and hammer it down. Alright, I'm back, and I've done some gluing. Alright, so I did cut some with the chops. I cut these pieces smaller because I learned that they were too long. They went in one side of the wood, then they went in the other, and they didn't go all the way in. This is a big gap. So I cut them, and also you can see there's a gap. There is end to be a gap anyway, but that's probably just because the wood is a little bit curvy. If you wanted to, and you had the time, and you had the metal clamps, you could take these two pieces of wood and just glue these two, and then clamp them from either end with strong metal clamps, and that would help get rid of that. You can put a little wood filler in here if you wanted to. I don't know if I'll let that worry me, and it also might take to this. I might not be able to get the exact color I want of wood filler, but that's something I'll do in the future once I do the actual finish work. This is just putting together the box. Okay, so I put some glue along the edge here, and in the holes where the dowels are going to go. This is the bottom. I just flipped it upside down. And I put the dowels with some glue in it here. It spills out a little bit. That's okay. It's water. You can wash it off with water. I try to do that before it dries. It makes life easier. But so then I'll put this on here. Like so. And I actually didn't put dowels in all the holes because it's going to be hard enough to try to line up them all. And then I'll take that down here to my woods, to the ground, a little more sturdy surface. And I put those pieces of wood so when I'm hammering down on it, it's a little less likely to damage my wood. On wood is better than concrete on wood as far as damaging goes. And then I'll hammer it down with this on top. I'll hammer on this, so if this wood gets injured, then it won't hurt that. Birch is pretty hard wood, and so actually hammering on it doesn't hurt it as much as it would if you were hammering on pine. Definitely don't want to hammer on pine. I'll go ahead and hammer it in. See how this is kind of pulling up here? I'm going to try to hammer that down more. So I wasn't able to hammer it down more, but I think if I push down on it, it goes down. And so this is a spot where I'd want to put some weight on it while it dried. I'm going to go ahead and put the bottom or the top on first, though, before I put that weight on. So I almost forgot to put in the middle piece first before I put on the top, so I went ahead and glued that in. Alright, here I go. I got the back. Here's the back done, and then here's the front. Kind of shadowed in there, but now I just put these rocks on kind of to squish it down to help the glue get it as tight as I could. And I put a scrap piece of wood in between just to protect my finished wood. After it's all put together, again, we will sand it. Put wood filler in if you want, and then stain it. It turned out pretty good. Now the doors will go on. The doors are a little bit too tight, so I need to cut them down a little bit. Better to be too tight and then have to cut down the length a little bit than to have them too short and have a big gap. So I'll go ahead and do that now, just to show you how that process goes. So there's a tool called the Swanson square, which is this right here. It just helps you so you can make straight cuts that are at a right angle to the side of the wood. You just take a pencil, one hand you secure your Swanson square, and then the other one you draw your line to cut. I figure I gotta cut no more than a 1/16 of an inch. So I already drew my line here. I'll go cut it now. So I was looking at the wood, that these are the two doors. And in order for the doors to close, got my oranges there too. In order for the doors to close, there's this middle piece here. And it fits snug. So if you can imagine this door opening and closing, by the time it gets over here, it might have trouble closing. So I'm going to have to cut. Sorry, it's on this side actually. The door is like this, and it's fixed on this end, and it's trying to open over here. It's going to scrape against that as it's trying to get out, and it's going to scrape trying to get back in too. And so what I need to do is cut where I marked here, and that's what I'm going to do over with the table saw. I have to set it at a pretty steep angle though. So I took the guard off, which isn't something that's necessarily recommended, but for this steep of an angle, the guard would just be more of a hindrance. I'll be careful. And then I moved, this is the fence here, to the position that I wanted it. And the reason I figured out where I wanted it is because I looked at the blade, and where I wanted to cut, where I marked, it's kind of hard to see, but just want to cut off a little angle there, a little triangle at the end. I think I'll start winding down this part of the project. I just sanded with the power sander all the surfaces that I could get to. Again, the more you sand, the more you're going to be able to get those nice seams after you... Well, you want to get the planks to seam up pretty well, so if you sand them down to where they're even, you'll have a little better finish. And then you'd go in with wood filler and fill in these gaps in the back here. And then you'd actually do a light sanding again after the wood filler dried. And then we'd stain it with the rag and some stain. And you'd put the hinges on for the doors. And if you have a clasp, put a clasp on here, hinges on over here. And this is kind of what it'll look like when the doors are in. Just put one door in here. Now I put this centerpiece out a little bit but we can actually make it angled to where the clasp, it'll clasp right here, and so there'll be kind of a nice little angle to the center. But that's how one door will look. Imagine a handle on there and then some clasps, and pull it out. Then on the inside, this is a jewelry box after all, I'd probably drill some pegs in here at a slight angle, put several of them. You can hang necklaces and bracelets, and then I'd also probably put maybe a few shelves in. Originally my plan was to put a whole nother unit on top here with shelves, pull out shelves. Might do that sometime in the future. And that's the project of learning some carpentry skills in building a jewelry box.